Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco, just one of the best guys covering the New York Knicks, does video breakdowns after every single game on Twitter, and we are going to dive deep on the Knicks' loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, including a distinct lack of physicality, a reversion to bad habits for Julius Randle, RJ Barrett still struggling to find his shot, and some moments of brilliance from Immanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. We are now available on all platforms, and that includes, maybe you're lucky enough to already know, on YouTube. So if you're not watching on YouTube, please go check us out there. And all you have to do is click that subscribe button, and if you've made my day. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, a play-by-play broadcaster. Typically, I would be joined by my co-host, Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the greatest Knicks website, The Strickland. He is currently at a wedding, so I found a great replacement for the night. I am lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco, who's just a ray of sunshine, one of the, even though we've never met in person, just one of the nicest people I've ever talked to, and one of the smartest covering the New York Knicks. I'll mention it a little later in the pod, but go throw him a follow on Twitter at @PachecoNBA. Just everything out of that guy's mouth is gold, and we're going to get into it right now on the Milwaukee Bucks. Without further ado, here is Ariel. All right, guys, as promised, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco. You can check him out on Twitter at @PachecoNBA. We're just talking about it pre-show. He's now doing audio with his video breakdowns, officially winning the video thread war with Benji Ritholtz. Ariel, thanks for coming on, man. Always so good to talk to you. How's it going early season?
It's going good. You always give me the nicest intros, so I really appreciate you for that. Always.
I saw you were on Pod Strickland this week, so I'm like, all right, I really got to ramp it up. I got to flatter him, or we're gonna lose him as our main guest here.
No. I'll always be a guest here. No worries.
All right, awesome. All right, you come on a tough night for the New York Knicks. 119-108, obviously first loss on the season where they weren't really in it in the closing seconds with that heartbreaker to Memphis to open the season. And honestly, the first night that there were real concerns offensively for this team, obviously against the Grizzlies, the first half was really ugly, and yet there was some real bright spots coming out of this game. And this one, outside of the bench, you're sort of left like looking for answers. And for a team that came in fifth in the NBA in offense, and this obviously the first elite defense they played, I guess, like, how concerned are you? How much of a litmus test do you think this was? Was it just an off night, or is there stuff here that you're like, that is going to be an issue against better defenses all season long?
I think it's fair to have concerns, but I think those concerns were also like exacerbated by guys having like tough shooting nights. Julius came into the game shooting pretty well from three. I'm not sure what he shot tonight, but from three, but I don't think he made one. RJ Barrett, again, continuing to struggle. I also think the Bucks are just like a really bad matchup for the Knicks, just because Brunson, Randle, and Barrett, they all love, scoring in the paint, and the Bucks have two of the best rim protectors in the NBA, period, and Brook Lopez and Giannis. So I think where the Knicks like to thrive is kind of where the Bucks like thrive defensively. So it's a bit of a tough matchup there. The Bucks have a lot of length. So I think, it was kind of tough for those guys to get going, especially at the start. I thought Brunson should have been a little bit more aggressive looking for his shot, but the Bucks also have like a very good defensive backcourt in Drew Holiday and Javon Carter. So those two kind of did their job against Brunson. But overall, I think it's fair to have concerns, but I do think the Bucks are just always have been kind of a tough matchup for the Knicks in that sense.
Yeah, and then on the other end, I mean, like every team in the NBA, the Knicks had zero answer for Giannis, which obviously exacerbates things. And I just thought they had a lot of problems with the Bucks' physicality overall, especially on defense. I saw you were discussing this with someone on Twitter, and maybe it's something we dive a little deeper on as the podcast goes along, but Obi Toppin, despite shooting lights out, another big game for him from distance, playing really well offensively, like didn't close down the stretch. And it felt like a case of like, all right, we need to throw someone like probably our center on Giannis. And then he was just struggling, like whether it was Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis, boxing those guys out. Portis finished this game with 8 offensive rebounds. The Bucks beat the Knicks in terms of transition points, or rather points off turnovers, 17-2. It just felt like a matchup between like a Knicks team that, like, against some of the weaker defenses in the NBA, like showed some nice physicality and came up as tough. And like Mitchell Robinson is always so emblematic of this, where he just dominates bad competition, and then against great teams sometimes falters. And then like they run into a team that's been there, obviously just won a championship, missing a few rotation guys, but kind of like woke them up a little bit. And they were like, all right, you want like tough, like playoff basketball? Like this is what it looks like. Are you ready for it? And tonight the Knicks weren't really.
Yeah, the Knicks lost the game on the glass and at the free throw line, in my opinion. They just got, again, like physically outclassed on the offensive glass. And I do think Obi played well outside of the defensive rebounding. I just thought that he played well. He played better than Randle. And I thought that he deserved kind of to just close it out. I don't think the Knicks were going to win this game regardless with how bad they were struggling with their top guys like Barrett, and Brunson and Randle. So I didn't think they were going to win the game regardless. I thought just as like Obi, you played well on this end. We have something going while you're on the court. I think he should have finished the game. And as well, I think they took a little too long to go back to IQ in the second half. The Knicks offense really struggled for like, it was like a good 3-minute stretch where I think they went scoreless and the Bucks went on this like 15-0 run or whatever it was. So yeah, I just thought that he played well enough offensively to kind of give himself a shot to close the game, even if he struggled on the defensive glass.
Yeah, I thought it just felt like the Bucks, like I didn't like how easily the Knicks were taken out of the identity that worked well for them offensively early in the season, where they were playing with like not elite pace by NBA standards. They've been pretty average in terms of pace amongst the whole league, but relative to last year where they were the second slowest team in the NBA, you bring in Jalen Brunson, who was the point guard of the slowest team in the NBA. And despite that, they've been able to play faster. Like we have a running joke on this pod about Euro Julius. Like he watched like Euro Cup over the summer and all of a sudden was like, or Euro basket rather. And all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, this is cool. Like you can pass, you can touch it and make a quick decision. No way. I'm going to try that this year. And to me, like his performance was sort of a microcosm for the offense as a whole, where it was too easy to push him back into last year Randle, where it felt like 3-4 minutes into this game, he like something like a switch flipped in his head in a very bad way. And he was like, all right, like the passes aren't coming as easily. Like guys aren't breaking wide open. Like this team actually gets back in transition. I better like try and shoot a 3 in Giannis's eye. Like I better take like a step back midi. And it was unfortunate to see, because that was kind of my big question with Randle with this hot start, that maybe I didn't do a good enough job saying on the podcast repeatedly, but it was does this hold up against the good defense and going up against the great one tonight and going up against arguably the best defensive player in the league in Giannis? Like it didn't hold up very well for him in particular. And I thought the rest of the offense kind of crumbled from there.
Yeah, I also think it's worth mentioning too that the Bucks play drop, but they play like probably one of the deepest drops in the NBA. Like Brook Lopez is just literally standing in the paint. They always have him or Giannis just like literally standing in the paint. He got called for 3 seconds a bunch of times. So, and then the Knicks kind of struggled to hit their shots from the outside. So when they were coming off those screens and they finally did get a look, it just wasn't, they couldn't knock it down. And they also have 2 of the best guys at getting through screens in Carter and Holiday. So it's just really tough to score on that Bucks defense. And then I think that's why there was a section in like the third quarter at the start where you kind of saw Fournier getting more chances to operate, to initiate the offense. And that's because I think Tibbs saw that Fournier is one of the few guys on the team who's a good pull-up shooter, especially in the starting lineup other than Brunson. And I think he was trying to get Fournier going, but then he started turning the ball over. It didn't really work out. So I think the drop that the Bucks play is just, it's like the Knicks kryptonite in a sense for their offense.
All right, guys, when we come back with Ariel Pacheco, I want to continue the conversation about the offense and some questions about the rotation, including should Immanuel Quickley start at the shooting guard spot? But before I get into all that, I gotta help you make some money. Sometimes we do it with BetOnline. Today, we are helping you do that with PrizePicks. Tonight on PrizePicks, I took Julius Randle to have over 20 points. That was a bad bet. I took Immanuel Quickley to hit more than 1.5 threes. That was a good bet. I took Obi Toppin to play under 20 minutes. That was a good bet, unfortunately. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people, just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you can watch. That includes the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals are offered as well. It's currently operational in over 30 states and, more importantly, Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100%. That's right, 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to use promo code LOCKEDON to sign up today for an instant deposit match up to $100. Yeah, maybe someone like Quentin Grimes could make an impact against that kind of defense down the road. But it just, I mean, to your point, it felt like they just needed more juice offensively. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you could say this for the entirety of the Tibbs era, is that they just haven't been able to, and like, it's hard to tell, like, is this a rotation failure or is this just the roster, like, not being good enough? Where, like, I think Tibbs, like, struggles with the decision a lot. Like, do I get a little bit more like movement and pace and verve offensively? And like, am I willing to sacrifice like rim protection and rebounding? That's even like Mitchell Robinson, like, not that like Isaiah Hartenstein was great in this game. Like he hit 3 of those flip shots in the first half, which were a lot of fun, but at least you get a modicum of spacing with him. And I think when he was in there, they were doing this a little bit with Mitch. You saw in that third quarter, RJ started really cooking. I think he finished with something like 13 points in the third quarter. And I saw, you noted this on Twitter, they were setting off-ball screens with him, like letting him catch the ball on the run, usually like right at the top of the foul line. And he was like all of a sudden getting easy baskets, but it was because there wasn't a big man at the rim. But then on the flip side, like, not that Mitch was great defensively in this game, but I thought Hartenstein, like, he had his moments on defense, but was also very foul happy, like also had problems like defending the defensive glass. And like, even though I disagree with a lot of what Tibbs did in this game in terms of rotations, I thought there were stretches where he's just stuck with the starters for too long. You sympathize with him in that, like, all right, there's not really a lot of two-way solutions at times against a great team.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I did think they did a good job of getting RJ going in that third quarter. He was coming off staggers, he was coming off curl screens. A lot of things they've been doing with Cam as well. So I thought they did a good job of getting RJ at the rim on the move, and where he's able to use his strength instead of having to kind of body through and then finish over a big. He just had to kind of finish over whoever was at the rim. And then in terms of Tibbs, I don't think he necessarily did like an awful job tonight. I do think the Bucks, again, they're just a really bad matchup, and they're also one of the best teams in the NBA. It's important to remember that. But I think Tibbs was kind of searching for someone who can guard Giannis. But then whenever he put one of his centers on Giannis, they got killed on the glass. So I think he was just kind of searching, and he just never found it. I thought their best shot was to just kind of go like all offense. Maybe go small. Maybe this is the game where you realize you're going to get dominated on the glass regardless, and you decide our best chance of winning is to just outscore these guys. That's also kind of why I was leaning Obi, because he was one of the few guys on the Knicks who had it going offensively. He made 3 threes. So that's kind of where I was at with Tibbs. I'm not going to be too harsh on him tonight. It's just the Bucks are really damn good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like I'm saying, like this is an issue the Knicks run into against a great team. It's an issue like every like mediocre NBA team runs into against a great team. But I was with you. I was kind of like praying and hoping. I was like, maybe we get 2 more fouls for Mitch, 2 more fouls for Hardenstein. Maybe you finally see fantasy basketball out there and you see Obi and Randle. And I think like part of the reason, I know to some extent that's suicide against Giannis, but there's something about playing a small lineup that all of a sudden like everyone buys into rebounding a little bit more, because you just like, if you're a guard, you just don't have that assumption that like, all right, Mitch is going to take care of it, or Isaiah is going to take care of it. Like you have guys like Quickley flying and you guys like RJ flying, or at least that's the hope if you're going to go smaller, and you can kind of like just bond around a scrappy identity, at least for one night. And particularly with the way Obi's shooting the basketball, it opens up so many possibilities for Randle as a roller. And I think he could have let Randle like take advantage of that floater that he's been showing off so far this year. I mean, you mentioned like how deep Lopez is going and drop. Like there was a reason Hartenstein kept getting to that shot. But again, like it was a situation where there are no perfect solutions. How are you feeling? Like this is bigger picture, but about that Randle Obi dynamic earlier this year, because it's one of those things, like obviously as long as Julius is playing to the standard he did the first, 3 games in the season in particular, and to some extent against the Hornets, like it's hard to justify Obi, because you can say like, all right, he's just the better player right now. But you watch Obi draining threes, you watch what he does in transition. And you also just look at a long-term scope of this team. And I still have questions like, all right, is Randle actually going to be here through the life of this contract? Like how have you kind of like settled the balance between those two in your mind, at least like in terms of the rest of the season? Because like on a night like tonight, especially when Obi's shooting well, it just further solidified in my mind, like, all right, there's like a 1 in like 20 scenario in any given game that Obi's going to do enough to close, and Randle's going to be bad enough that it'll just force Tibbs' hand to let Obi close.
Yeah, I think Tibbs is set on like I think that first season they had together, I think is just still in the back of Tibbs's mind, and I think Julius is always going to get the benefit of the doubt, especially when closing games. I also think I don't know if this is fair to say, but I don't think Julius is. I don't think he's the kind of guy who would take being benched for Obi if he's healthy, kind of well, in any certain scenario. But just in terms of long term, I just think that as long as Julius is playing well, he earns his minutes. But I think in the night like tonight, where he's not playing well, the offense is kind of sluggish. The bench comes in, there's a jolt, there's a boost. I think you just kind of go with the hot hand in that sense. That's part of the benefit of having depth is that you can mix and match. You can go with what's working. You can go away from what's not. And it doesn't have to be a referendum on Julius and Obi and Randle's playing time for the whole season. It can just be a one night thing. Like he had it going tonight. We're gonna go with who we think is the better option.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point because it does. I mean, we saw it all of last year where Tibbs was harsh with everyone else and kind of like the ruthless like taskmaster that he's described as. And with Randle, it was the ultimate kick gloves. It was like we can't lose this guy. Like we can't hurt his feelings. And like honestly, that's to some extent like the test for Julius this year, where he's literally come out and said like verbatim, like I'm all about winning. That's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter who scores. It doesn't matter who gets the glory. And it's like, all right, like this is the test of it. Like you're having a bad night. Like let Obi close, and like when the camera cuts to you on the bench, like don't be pouting, and like you can't put that on Julius because he like Tibbs didn't give him the chance to like show maturity in that kind of situation. Like he just went with him. And to be clear, I think it's mostly for on the court reasons, and we don't have to like keep replaying this over and over again. But I think he just my sense with Tibbs is that like he's always going to feel like maybe it's that Obi just smiles all the time, but that there's like a certain lack of like toughness and ferocity there, and like ability to stand up defensively like against starters for long stretches. Like I just don't. I think that's honestly that's also part of why he won't play him and Randle together. He doesn't really believe in Obi doing big man things defensively, and I think there's like just from what we've seen from Obi over like his career, like there's definitely stuff to support that. And there are definitely nights where I'm like, no, like he can protect the rim a little bit. He can rebound a little bit. Like, and to your point, like he's just such a force on offense. Like you take the trade-off at a certain point. But what did you think of Immanuel Quickley's performance before we go to some other bad stuff? Because to me, he was the clear-cut bright spot in this game.
Yeah, he's probably the best player on the Knicks tonight, if I had to just on a quick thought. Yeah, so on both ends of the floor, though, he was very good. I thought he forced some turnovers. He was helping as the low man, even when Giannis was the one coming into the paint, which is not easy to do regardless of your height.
Scary
especially
to do.
with that different. Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're quickly sized defending Giannis. But again, when his 3-pointer is dropping, it's like a different game for him. I just think so much opens up for him. I also like that he got into the mid range a couple times. He had that one, I think it was an and one, or he got fouled where he kind of like probed into the lane. And it's usually a spot where he would pick up his dribble, kick it out, or whatever. But he kept going and he challenged at the rim, and he was able to get a good outcome from it.
Yeah.
So I just think overall, like Quickley is one of the more underrated Knicks prospects somehow, even though he continually impacts the game, even when his shot isn't dropping. But when his shot is dropping, it's just like a different level of impact. And he was like a +8 tonight, and the Knicks lost by double digits. So that tells you a lot.
Yeah, I was almost surprised when I went to the box score and I saw that he finished with only 14 points. I was like, didn't he have like 26 tonight? Like it felt like at times like a monster Quickley performance, and he ultimately just didn't really get the volume of shots off to get to that kind of total. And again, like just hasn't really been getting to the free throw line with quite the same consistency that he did at the end of last season, where he out of nowhere became super duper elite at that. But those 2 threes to start off, left me feeling really, really excited about him. And then to your point, just I think I can't remember if it was you who noted this or like someone on Twitter like noted a couple of times that he's just had like a tendency early this season to pick up his dribble a little bit too early and was doing that in the preseason as well. And like
Yeah.
the play you referenced, like where it was kind of what RJ was always doing his second season, where he kind of snaked the pick and roll, like went to one elbow and then just shot into the lane, got an and one. I was like a fading push shot on Javon Carter. In the first half, he like sped by Drew Holiday and then hit a banker through contact on Bobby Portis. I think that also might have been an and one. The one thing is, like, if we're going to criticize Tibbs for Obi, I like that he's showing faith in IQ and that he's now consistently coming in earlier than all the other bench guys and staying in after those guys go back to the bench and getting these really long stretches. He's closed, I think, pretty much every game this year, except for the Memphis game, where Fournier came back in for overtime. And then I guess the other night against Charlotte, it was Reddish in there.
It was Cam, actually. Yeah, you're
right. Yeah. But he, I don't know, Tibbs, like, unlike with Obi, where it feels like, all right, there should be a next step in confidence with Obi, and it's still not there, and that's like, I don't know, causes me like in like IBS basically. But with Quickley, it does feel like there is that step up in confidence. Do you think it should go a step further, and at least until Grimes is back, he should be the starter at the 2-guard spot, or do you still like what he brings coming off the bench? And as Tibbs says, like, quote unquote, like, it matters more who finishes than who starts.
I think right now he is the best option to start just because he brings the best combination of shooting, defense, and the playmaking. I just think especially with kind of the minutes cap that's on Rose, I don't think there is like a harsh one, but they obviously want to keep his minutes down based on what we've seen. I just don't think Tibbs, because if Quickley starting, Rose would have to play a decent amount of minutes in the game, and I don't think they want to overuse Rose just yet. But I do think Quickley is the best option to start at the 2. And if you noticed through the first 5 games in the rotations, you'll notice that Quickley is often coming in for Fournier at the start, and he does get about a couple minutes with the starters. So I don't know if that's Tibbs giving it a look or if it's just happenstance, but I do think it's something that is worth taking a look at, especially with how bad Fournier's looked on defense this year.
I do really love him and Brunson playing together. And obviously you get a little bit of this with Rose, but just on the nights this year where it's been working for Randle and when it's been working for Brunson, Quickley just inevitably he gets more catch and shoot opportunities. And that was an area he really struggled last year, but I just think he's too good of a shooter for that to become a trend with him. And I'm really confident that he can do so much good for this offense, to your point, in his starting role. All right, we did some good. We'll go back to the bad. RJ Barrett, we mentioned the monster third quarter. Another night where you look at the final numbers: 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, just 1 turnover in this game. Like, was 1 for 7 for 3, but did go 6 of 10 for 2, which is obviously good. And it's not a bad game, but I don't know. I'm just so concerned about his shot at this point. And maybe that's dumb because we had a 4-game sample size in the preseason of it looking really good. Now we have a 5-game sample size of it looking really bad. It's now 3 straight years. He's probably his rookie year too, where he's gotten off to terrible starts. So it's a trend with him. Maybe that's, I don't know. I can't really explain it, but maybe that's just something that he does. But I was just hoping to see more of a clear-cut leap in his game entering year 4. It felt like, all right, like he got the contract. The Knicks, even if some people in the front office disagreed, maybe a lot of the front office disagreed, like they ultimately didn't trade him for Donovan Mitchell. Like, this was sort of the time for him to cement himself, like, if not as a superstar, like just a consistently positive force and one that, like, even if he's not at league average efficiency, hovers close enough to that to justify the volume he soaks up every single night. And this was another one of those nights where, especially off the dribble, like his shot just still looks so stiff. And I think I find myself surprised that even if it's not going in, like, it still doesn't feel like there's a comfort level there. And there's still like he just looks uncomfortable. Like the defining play of this one might've been that 4-on-1 that the Knicks had late in the second quarter, where he ended up missing a 6-foot bunny. And on one hand, I was like, why didn't he get all the way to the rim? And then I was like, yeah, but he still should have just made that shot. So I was left with a bad feeling about him. How do you feel about him in general early on this season?
Yeah, definitely struggling again to start the season. It's a trend for the past 2 years. On the bright side, he has evened out and gotten to a pretty decent 3-point percentage at the end of all those seasons. So if there's some hope in there, it's that. I just think it's Prez on Twitter who often goes into like the detail of his footwork when he's pulling up, and it's different every time, and like it's never consistent. And I think that's a big issue and has been throughout his career. And when it comes to the finishing, there's still so many layups that he like leaves that are fairly makeable, and I just think that he lacks the touch around the rim. And I don't know if we'll ever really see him improve to the level that I think a lot of people hope to. That's not to say he'll never, be a good player or whatever. I just think that it's year 4, and if you haven't shown that improvement with the touch by now, it gets a little less likely that you're going to see it down the line. He's still fairly young, so it's not impossible. But just every game that goes by and you don't see the improvement, you get a little more skeptical. But yeah, I'm also disappointed in his defense. I have been disappointed in his defense, especially off the ball. He gets beat back door like once a game, and he has the body, the frame, and the wherewithal to be a good defender. At the end of the Charlotte game, second half overtime, he was very good on defense. Actually, he helped lock down Hayward and Oubre. It's very up and down with RJ on both ends now, and part of being a good NBA player is being good night in and night out. So that's the thing I guess I'll be paying attention to for the rest of the season, is just consistency and being able to impact the game in a positive way night in and night out.
I think that's maybe at least as surprising as his shooting. Like last year, we saw him have really poor stretches defensively, and I thought more than anything, it was a product of him kind of unexpectedly turning into the number 1 guy on offense, and maybe just not totally ready from a fitness perspective to take that on every night and play great defense. And look, there are very few players in the NBA that are alpha dogs on offense. Like very few young players, I should say, in the NBA that are number 1 options on offense and like hold their own defensively. Like it's a gargantuan task. And I thought this offseason he would have kind of remedied that, especially because there was going to be less of a load on him offensively. And the perception we have of RJ of like this guy who's like all heart, never say die, like effort's never going to be an issue. And at times this year, I don't know if it's effort or focus, but like it certainly feels like those things have affected him. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I wanted to just check. Was there anyone else in this game, like good or bad, that stood out to you?
I do think Rose's minutes have been very interesting to me just in general, because he also, unless I missed it tonight, I don't think he got any minutes with Brunson, which I think I actually would have preferred they ended the Hornets game with the Brunson Rose backcourt. But I do think that pairing could be interesting at times, especially when the offense is struggling, because they both give you a mix of pull-up shooting and then what's the word? Rim rim attempts. Sorry, penetration. So I do think that pairing. I haven't seen it yet, and I want to see that pairing. But yeah, I do think Rose has been really good in his limited minutes. He has some uncharacteristic turnovers tonight, but overall, I think Rose can have a bigger role in this team, especially when Grimes is out. But we just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it feels weird, right? Because he's been incredible, at least on offense, every single time he gets into the game. Like the first layup he had, I didn't know he still had that speed in him. He just shot around George Hill, like hit another nice pull-up wing 3, hit that corner 3 where I think it might have been Lopez who was right in his grill. Like I've talked about it almost every podcast, so I don't want to belabor the point, but he's just turned himself into like a legitimately great shooter, which is it's kind of crazy. And it makes you, I mean, it's kind of like we're seeing with Ja Morant now, like it's this great what if of his career. Like if he could have found that shot, like while he still had the athleticism, like again, you're talking about someone who like is the best player on a title team. So it's cool to see. And I'm with you. I wonder, like, first of all, like I like how many minutes they're playing, and just because it leaves that window for Quickley to sort of be the dude. Because I think if this was 2 seasons ago or last season, like Rose would be the guy who was coming in early with the starters and like staying in late with the bench. But it's still like on some level, like you're sort of left like, all right, is he actually like our 3rd or 4th best player? Like, why isn't he playing more?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is up there on the list. Even in his limited minutes, he still has a good impact. But I do think that's a fair point that it would cut away at Quickley's minutes probably. So I think Quickley deserves the reps.
Yeah. He was awesome tonight. I think we can wrap up on Brunson. Like there were a couple other guys, like Cam, like I thought forced some bad shots. Like whatever was going on with Randle tonight, it sort of rubbed off on him a little bit. So I don't want to fixate on that because I'm team Cam. So I don't want to belabor the point there. But I thought this was interesting for Brunson, right? That comes off that Hornets game, a defining performance for him early in his Knicks tenure, obviously. And you want him to come out and be just as aggressive. And we've seen now in a couple of games where he I think maybe because he's so used to playing with Luka, like he lets it come to him maybe a little bit too much. And at times you almost want Tibbs to go up to him and be like, hey, you're the best player on this team offensively. Like you need to go be that guy every single night. And there was a point in this game where he had 4 shots to 4 and he has 9. And I saw that and just kind of wanted to throw up. And to me, like that defined the first half. And to your point, I know the Bucks guards are exceptionally good defensively, but like that's sort of the test. Like if he came to New York to be a number one guy, like you're going to see those types of defenders, and you still like, even if you aren't at your normal efficiency, like you still got to get those shots off because it's better that he's taking them right now than RJ or Randle.
Yeah, I tweeted it as well. I thought Brunson needs to be more aggressive, especially when you're playing the top teams in the NBA. He's one of their best. He is their best shot creator offensively, and if the Knicks want to have a shot against these teams night in and night out, he's gonna have to be the one to get it going. He's the one who draws in the defense the most. He has the best combination of pull-up shooting and rim pressure. So I think overall, like, Brunson's aggression is going to be something I'm also going to be paying attention to as the season goes on. Because if not, you're left with Fournier taking more shots or Randle jacking up some more jumpers that you don't really want him taking. It just bogs down the offense even more because now other guys have to kind of pick up the shots that he's not taking.
Yeah, I think it's something that'll come as the season goes along, and he's never had that role in the NBA. Honestly, in college, like he didn't totally, even though he was National Player of the Year, like that wasn't like they had such a balanced team. Like he didn't really have to do that. So I'm curious to see him develop that killer mindset. I'm curious if as the Knicks schedule gets tougher and tougher, if they can balance this thing out. But that's it for this one. But before I let you go, Ariel, can you just tell everyone one final time where they can find all your work, because it's really, really, really superb. There is universal consensus about like I think all the stuff you do and how good it is.
Way too kind. Just follow me on Twitter at A Pacheco NBA. Anything I do will be up on there on Twitter. So just follow me there, A Pacheco NBA.
All right, cool. I think it was like 3 months. I'm sure it won't be as long until next time you come on, but thanks a lot, man. And we'll talk to everyone soon on Locked On Knicks. We'll be back early next week. I think the Knicks play Sunday. So Monday morning with the game recap. But until then, be good. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, that was a great time with Ariel. Before I let you go, I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.